People's Republic of China, and business sector participants from Mongolia. So this is just to re-emphasize what they have mentioned, what we have, the panel has underscored earlier. First, on the topic of trade infrastructure, there's a common suggestions to improve trade digitalization infrastructure. And for example, this includes cargo trade infrastructure, single window, even for private sector, light industry, trade hubs, development of smart overseas warehouses. And in parallel to those infrastructure, we need to ensure common standards and maintain economic agreement among the members. So after the digital suggestions, digital infrastructure suggestions, we still have, particularly a case in point, our representative from Hove province of Mongolia, who emphasized the need to improve infrastructure because of their location in the PRC, aligning with the PRC and Russia. They underscored the importance of developing industrial parks, and in addition to that, is to develop new make sure that border crossing points, logistics center, and even customs are all promoting in those particular areas. So this is like similar to what I've underscored later on economic corridor development, that one-stop shop development to ensure that foreign investments, local investments are there, and logistics. So Kazakhstan underscores importance of cooperation with neighbors. They underscore diversity, trade policies and agreements, explore and develop new transport routes, border centers for our cooperation, and other ports. And I wanted to emphasize also what Kyrgyz Republic mentioned in terms of green economies to promote participation, or for example, we have livestock in Mongolia coordinating with halal and organic, closer ties to promote exports and trade in terms of halal and organic products among Central Asian countries. And they identified a long list of projects, railroads, and new ports in Turkmenbashi, in Turkmenistan, which will, this infrastructure connection will promote better integration of the economies, as well as diversification and export promotion. So thank you. I hope I did justice to our speakers. Thank you for the members of Roundtable from the CAREC program. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Roundtable number 2 about discussing trade infrastructure facilitated by the Asian Development Bank, ADB. Thank you very much. Because we are conscious of time, we will now move to Roundtable number 3 on trade and finance facilitated by the EBRD. Allow me to welcome on stage Mr. Holger Wiffer. Thank you.
We'll make that. Okay, I have to say I was a little bit worried before the roundtable, and I prepared actually 3 pages what I was expecting to hear. My absolute congratulations to a fantastic 3 tables that came up with the challenges and a couple of solutions in terms of how we can improve trade and finance in the region. This is all a little bit Central Asia and Mongolia centric, but nevertheless, I hope this is adaptable to any other landlocked country. So the challenges are co-financing, collateral. For any investment, banks take and loan for working capital or capex, they take collateral. The collateral evaluations or valuations are far too low. That means that we don't get the necessary finance in the necessary size. There are too high interest rates. There are a couple of government programs that are deployed with subsidized lending rates, but those are unfortunately not reaching all, and in particular SME companies that would make best use out of it. So in transparency of who is eligible to receive such kind of subsidized loans and investments, and the credit terms are too short. If we are investing into CapEx, if we are trying to beef up our export capacities, we need longer money in order to, longer terms in order to pay back the money to the banks. Logistics, the next big problem that has been discussed, the challenge, it's too expensive to export. Customs taxes are too high and the speed is too low. Again, there are official payments and there are unofficial payments. Intransparent administration of the whole procedure. We suggest digitalization would actually help in terms of putting more transparency and making it cheaper and faster. Not well known, the logistic routes, in particular by SMEs, have even problems finding the counterparts and the companies that could do the logistics. And the road transportation, in particular in our region, is quite challenging, in particular when we're talking about coming from Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan and getting into a Mongolian market. We even had a very interesting idea in terms of foster and introduce small aviation, so small planes that could do the job. And then the solutions are make better use of the free trade agreements or actually instill them. We have a very good example with Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. We have a custom-free trade corridor. We would like to see more of these, or our companies would like to see more of these. We should invest much more into finance and knowledge that is coming with it. We need to streamline the custom procedure. It's not really trade and finance, but I need to mention it one again. My predecessor just said hubs, creation of hubs, SMEs to deliver a voice to the government and to counterparts. And we are not known as a region in terms of a big exporter, so we need to make ourselves known in that regard as well. And we need to combine our forces in order to actually get the logistics better. It doesn't make sense for a small and medium-sized enterprise to have actually a full container sometimes with import goods or export goods. So we should trench it more. We should combine. We should collectively look at it, and we should develop cluster systems. Thank you so much again for all your contributions. I hope I did due to your thoughts and ideas and voice. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wiefel, for observing the time and also for the solid contributions from roundtable number 3 for giving us the challenges, but also proposing some of the solutions. With, again, time, conscious of time, we have to move to roundtable. That's roundtable number 1, discussing regional connectivity and facilitated by the UNOHRLLS. Allow me to welcome on stage Ms. Irene Tembo. She's the Chief Planner, Ministry of Transport and Logistics, the Republic of Zambia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Group 1 will actually concentrate on the recommendations. There are a number of issues that were discussed, but we'll just concentrate on the recommendations for the new program of action. So one of the first things that our group recognized was that we should promote trade in services, especially ICT and digital trade. And there's also need for the promotion of coordination and harmonization with transit countries. There's need to promote infrastructure, and this infrastructure will look at both physical infrastructure and soft infrastructure. And this goes also to the promotion of one-stop border posts, the promotion of industrialization, the promotion of development corridors. And there's also need to support LLDCs in the development of bankable projects. We also need the private sector to come on board. And having talked about climate change, we need resilient infrastructure. Then there's also need for resource mobilization, and this also goes to domestic resource mobilization. And then most of our countries are in need of debt restructuring. And for the LLDCs from the African continent, there's need for us to leverage on the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And some of our friends mentioned that there's need to eliminate politically motivated challenges in transit. And then there's need for the promotion of dry ports, and these dry ports may also be used as industrial zones to attract manufacturers. And there's need to promote contactless border procedures through the promotion of ICTs. And there's also need to promote coordination of the private sector in order for them to help us with development. And we also discussed on the need to reduce agencies at the border. Thank you very much.
Please, another round of applause for group roundtable number 1, facilitated by the UNOHRLS. They've given us fantastic contributions on the challenges, but also proposed solutions. And to sum it up for us, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome Alina Fetisova from the ITC to give us the summary of the last roundtable facilitated by the ITC on inclusive trade facilitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Victor. Good afternoon again. It was such a pleasure to have a very active audience, very engaging roundtable discussion on inclusive trade facilitation. And let me highlight for you just probably 5 main points that we heard. First, bringing business perspective to reform implementation and fostering the culture of public and private partnership is key. We heard from some participants that still this pro-control mindset in government agencies doesn't allow them to fully embrace the opportunities in trade for private sector. And they would like to see this shift to risk management practices, to more efficiency mindset. And there is a lot of cooperation possibilities between ministries of trade, customs broker associations, women business associations to leverage that. And we need very effective national trade facilitation committees to foster this type of regional and national dialogue. Second point, infrastructure. We heard this from many other roundtables, but specifically gender inclusive infrastructure. Introducing this type of solutions at the border, but also trade portals, inquiry points, simplified trade regimes to make this environment work for women. Third point, which came very abstract, is inequality among different private sector actors and the need to create very targeted market linkage opportunities. And this should go as well on a company with access to finance and specifically special innovative financial products for non-traditional sectors. Very important, I would say. The fourth one, of course, we come back to the question of capacity building of small and medium enterprises, but also women, youth, indigenous communities to help them access new markets. And there it has to be really tailored to the needs of the country, but also of particular regions in the country. And we need to make sure that we take specific challenges with landlocked developing countries in this type of capacity building as well. Probably the last one here, the gender responsive trade facilitation in particular, there are some very key points that we have to keep in mind when we want to design this type of inclusive reforms. We need data, we need people, we need strong leadership who understand the specific gender responsive constraints in landlocked developing countries. And we need to establish focal points and also the organization of women business associations in business alliances, make them part of the national representation committees and regional committees so that the business can speak as one voice. And as a big backbone of that, I think, ladies and gentlemen, is of course the whole of the supply chain approach, that we have to look at the different parts in the international trade procedures, simplify these procedures to reduce the time and cost of trade for those actors. And of course, we need the joint coordination and support of business development partners, international organizations, and other actors to make it work together. Thank you very much for your attention.
Another round of applause for Alina Fetisova from the ITC, and of course the roundtable discussing inclusive trade facilitation, of course facilitated by the ITC. Ladies and gentlemen, please clap for yourselves. I must admit that at the beginning, when the organizing team presented this idea to me about 4 different roundtables in different languages in the same room, I was a bit afraid about how successful that would be, especially on issues of time, and also making sure that we have a harmonized document presenting the challenges and the proposed solutions. But look at that, we are right on time. So again, clap for yourselves. Thank you very much. At this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me so much pleasure to welcome Mr. Dulgun Dambinod. He is the Executive Director, International Think Tank for Landlocked Developing Countries, to present his report. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's our pleasure to have you all here, and of course, thank you for all the progressive, sufficient inputs. And today we are very much happy also that because the private sector, of course, is a highly important role of the implementation of this Vienna Program of Action for landlocked developing countries. So today we had many points in regarding this international trade, and we had the discussions that importance of this engagement of the private sector to have your valuable insights into solution for our common challenges and opportunities faced by the businesses in operating in landlocked developing countries. So this input can help identify the most pressing needs and priorities of these countries, informing the development of tailored policies and programs. For example, the next year's 3rd UN conference on LLDCs and next 10 decades action plan for landlocked developing countries. So furthermore, it was emphasized that private sector consultation on the foster partnerships between governments, development partners, and businesses. Such partnerships are vital for successful implementation of our programs, on our plans, as they can leverage additional resources and expertise, ensuring active engagement in the development process. So discussions specifically focused on the trade corridors and border environments, infrastructures, and key areas of concern for businesses. Today we had the roundtables, covered topics such as infrastructure, regional integration, connectivity, trade facilitation, and finance. So tangible solutions and recommendations were identified to address these issues, with the aim of further supporting the implementation of the Vienna Program of Action and evaluation of the Vienna Program of Action. So on the trade infrastructure and regional connectivity, we discussed this hard infrastructure is still an important priority. We have still lack of missing gaps in the infrastructure development. As we all know, the infrastructure development requires high investments. So we need to continue enhancing the regional transport connectivity by investing in cross-border infrastructure projects such as highways, railways, and multimodal transportation systems. We just heard that also one good connectivity transportation model is aviation sector, which is not dependent from the transit countries, neighboring countries. So the aviation is also much more emerging transportation sector for the LLDCs, especially when you transport the low bulk and the high value products in terms of diversity. We need to develop this high value to small products for export. So borders and customs are also key as strengthen connectivity, streamlining customs and border posts and harmonizing procedures with the neighboring countries for smooth and expeditious movement of goods shall not stop. This process greatly enhances the predictability and transparency, reducing trade costs, delays for landlocked developing countries. Of course, the one important thing is digitalization. We heard enough today, and more investment in digital infrastructure, such as broadband connectivity, e-commerce platforms, and digital trade facilitation systems, including electronic queue management systems, electronic certificates, holistic single window systems is much needed. And artificial intelligence, Internet of Things will be soon informing new digital realities, and early investments will help to overcome physical barriers and divide in the digital development in the LLDCs. So we also need to continue working with institutions to strengthen their capacities in terms of capacity buildings of the private sectors and also in the government sector, related to trade reforms and infrastructure plannings. This can be done through the developing skilled human resources and establishing effective regulatory frameworks and fostering public-private partnerships. Regional cooperation and harmonization will remain essential to feel the impact of reform. We need to further strengthen regional trade agreements and transit arrangements, align policies and regulations and procedures among landlocked and transit countries. So we heard from the infrastructure, we need common standards in terms of the infrastructure development, yeah. And of course, due to this emerging recent conflicts in the international politics is somehow there's many sanctions against Russia, etc., is also very much affecting to LLDCs, especially in Central Asia. So that's we in terms of transport, there's needs of new routes in order to transport our exports, etc. So in terms of this trade facilitation, of course, I have to mention this trade facilitation agreement of the World Trade Organization, and should be recognized as one of the accelerator of the trade development for landlocked developing countries. So it is crucial for national governments and private sectors to develop comprehensive cooperation through this national trade facilitation committees. So private sector should have close collaboration with these national committees in your countries, at the government, in order to heard your voices from the private sectors in terms of trade facilitation. So also in terms of this diversity, is of course also we heard that the service sector is also important for LLDCs, especially with this corridor development. There's need to be develop the service sectors along the corridors, then the service from the income from the service sector is also very important. And as infrastructure and logistics, we heard this dry ports also very essential component of the infrastructure development, as also it has a big increasing role in LLDCs. This dry ports should also play as a hub for the connecting all this continents and in the region also. On the trade and finance and inclusive trade facilitation, and we just heard this from this EBRD, etc., also collaboration in the financing and in terms of financing this big infrastructure projects, also supporting the SMEs is essential, and providing clear communication and affordable and accessible financing options. And also include trade finance facilities, credit guarantee schemes, and capacity building programs to enhance this financial literacy and transparency, enable businesses in landlocked developing countries to access necessary fund for trade. In this, also regarding this things, also I would like to mention this green developments and funds for this. Also, we say that carbon credit also is a good source for funding, especially for the green development within in terms of fuel and technicality. So LLDCs need to improve their financial infrastructures by modernizing payment systems, promoting digital banking, and strengthening regulatory framework for cross-border financial transactions. So speaking about inclusive trade facilitation, we shall ensure that trade facilitation extends beyond border procedures and encompasses the entire journey of goods, including pre-shipment, transportation, custom clearances, and post-shipment activities. It shall involve a collaboration and coordination among government agencies like customs and border controls, of course, with the private sector entities and civil society organizations and international partners to streamline processes and reduce costs and minimize trade barriers. So I'd like to finalize all this report in our discussions in the free topics. Of course, also we mentioned this digitalization is also important in order to save the times, etc. As outcomes, concrete recommendations for actions from private sector representatives issued at the roundtable discussions will contribute to shaping the priorities of the upcoming third conference on LLDCs, which will be held in next year. Additionally, the discussions aim to strengthen relationships between government partners and private sector community, fostering joint and coordinated efforts for the implementation of the Vienna Program of Action. In conclusion, roundtable discussions provided valuable insights into the critical role of private sector in driving the implementation of those action plans, and through collaboration, innovative approaches addressing key challenges, LLDC can harness and potential of the private sector to achieve the sustainable inclusive development. So if I missed any points, make sure that we already had plentiful notes, so don't worry about it. And thank you for your attention and fruitful discussion.
Thank you very much. Once again, a clap for Mr. Dulgun Damdinot, the Executive Director, International Think Tank for Landlocked Developing Countries. Thank you very much for your report. Obviously very thick, but the beauty about it is it's going to give us a lengthier report later, so it's not going to waste. In Swahili, we say mambo mengi, muda mchache, which means many issues, but the time is short. At this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome on stage for her closing remarks and to close this session for us, Ms. Pamela Koch-Hamilton, the Executive Director of the International Trade Center. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure listening to the conclusions. Of course, we're familiar with many of them, and I really like the idea that we are able to think outside the box and come up with new possibilities. So today, of course, we had the privilege of consulting with the private sector on the Vienna Program of Action and focusing on the voice of businesses from landlocked developing countries. And I think that's very important because it's businesses that trade. So the roundtables, of course, provided valuable platform for dialogue, collaboration, and the exchange of ideas between policymakers, officials, and representatives from the private sector and the LLDCs. And these partnerships and engagements have given us critical insights into the priorities of our key stakeholders. And their conclusions will form the basis of a roadmap to the LLDC conference in Rwanda next year. The discussion today will also allow us to help LLDC governments and their private sector unlock their immense sustainable development and growth potential. This is why I value these engagements. As I said in my opening remarks, I might not be from an LLDC, but I certainly know a thing or two about being a hostage to geography. Today, we've heard so many rich insights from our LLDC partners. They, for example, emphasize the need for streamlined customs procedures, improved infrastructure, digital connectivity, access to finance, and inclusive reforms. They've also proposed capacity building initiatives, knowledge sharing platforms, and public-private partnerships, all in the aim of enhancing trade competitiveness and market access. Above all, they've spoken of the need for partnerships. Governments, international organizations, the private sector, and civil society must come together to share expertise, pool resources, and implement targeted interventions. LLDC recommendations shared today point to the critical role played by what we call connected services, such as transport and logistics, financial services, ICTs, and business and professional services. These sectors play a crucial role in driving a services-led economic transformation, contributing directly and indirectly to economic growth and development. These facilitative sectors are all the more important for businesses from LLDCs, where access to good trade facilitation and transit services is a necessary condition for trade survival. This is why ITC has prepared a multimedia publication entitled Transform Your Economies with Connected Services, which succeeds in highlighting the importance of connected services with a special focus on LDCs. As you can see, there's a, what do you call it? Yes, a QR code. See, I'm getting there. The multimedia publication recommends key areas LLDC should focus on if they want to remain up to speed with the latest digital supply chain and logistics transformations. The report also showcases our success stories and lessons learned for LLDC governments and the private sector. If you can scan the QR code, that will give you access to the publication and you'll be able to navigate it in more detail. So as we approach the closing of today's event, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to all the participants and contributors. Your voices, your experiences, and recommendations have truly enriched our understanding and will inform our collective efforts moving forward. I'd also like to thank the government of Mongolia for their great support and collaboration in organizing the session, as well as our partners, including the United Nations in Mongolia, United Nations Office of the High Representative for Least Developed, Landlocked Developing Countries and Small Island Developing States, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the Asian Development Bank, and the International Think Tank for Landlocked Developing Countries. Thank you all for your valuable contributions and cooperation that has made today's event possible. These deliberations, as I indicated, will inform the third UN Conference on the Landlocked Developing Countries and hopefully lead to the adoption of clear, actionable recommendations. We must continue to engage in dialogue, strengthen partnerships, and mobilize resources to support the aspirations of businesses in LLDCs. And it goes without saying, whatever recommendations come from Kigali next year, cannot just be for governments alone. The private sector must be a co-pilot in their efforts. So thank you once again, and hope you have a great rest of the day.
Another round of applause for the Executive Director, the International Trade Center, Ms. Pamela Cook-Hamilton. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This brings us to the end of today's session about business voices from landlocked developing countries and achieving regional trade connectivity. And I want to once again thank all of you for your participation. I think I love the symbolism from the roundtables that indeed until each one of us participates, until the voices of each one of us is heard, only then can we move forward. So thank you very much. On my personal capacity, it's been an honor to be the steward for this first session of the day, and I truly look forward to working with each one of you